Let's talk about education, which is probably one of my favorite topics. So, because I haven't stated it already, I live in we have a lot of amazing educational opportunities here, probably more than much of the rest of the country. Our mutual friend Libby, she also came and spoke about education in my home back in early 2019. And it's kind of funny to me how I made a post on LinkedIn about the teachers union a couple of days last week. I was supposed to go to Cyber Week with some of my team members, and because the teachers decided to, because they hate your kids and they hate you as parents, they're like, we're just going to continue to strike. And now my team couldn't go to Cyber Week. It hurt the economy, it hurt the Parnassah, it hurt our growth because they had to stay home with their young children. This is a problem, and of course, I posted it. I got some agreement. A lot of people agree with me privately in message. And of course, some people don't misread everything I write. They miss out. But is it possible currently we are having a situation in Israel, which I think is pretty, it's also, I think, a challenge in America and other Western countries, where for some reason, even the politicians don't choose the education and the parents don't choose the education. The fact that I don't choose if my kid goes to school tomorrow, but a teachers union does, and what they learn and who their teacher is I have no control over this if I go to an Israeli public institution. And then we complain about the shitty education. Why is it that people can't connect, well, people can't connect the dots?
I think that once, this is going back to what we said in the beginning of this conversation. Once you spend your, 12 years from the age of 6 to the age of 18 in schools, in government schools, and everything you study during those years is that the rich are evil, and
Are they
the
really
trade
teaching that? I
unions.
didn't go to school here, and they taught me that
Oh,
university
oh,
in
oh
America.
yeah,
But I was more like it was really gross. But in what do you mean, like middle school? There, what are they saying? What do you mean? Can you
yeah.
expound?
So
Yeah, because I
so
believe people
basic.
don't even know what their kids are learning. I think some parents would be shocked.
Yeah, I think that recently there's more and more talk about stuff that has to do with more progressive values and, and the transgender stuff and whatever you. But certainly during the last decades, since the beginning of the country, as far as I know, what you're being taught in school is that the free market is the enemy and people have a right to have high wages and education and housing and everything else, and competition is bad and regulation is good, and if you let the free market roam free, then the poor are going to be exploited, all of those things. So one of the implications of that is that you don't want the free market to educate your kids. You want to make sure that the trade unions have special privileges, because otherwise you're going to have exploitation and whatever. And all of these things that people learn for 12 years, and then they hear it also from the media for their entire lives, is the outcome is basically that freedom is bad, supervision from the state is good, and therefore you need to have the state to make sure that your kids learn, whatever they need to learn in schools. And if you let, private business people educate your kids, then your kids are going to become small cogs in some horrible capitalistic machine and they're going to be exploited. I think that's what is resting in the foundation of this ideology in Israel that is fighting against free education or the voucher system, right? Free competition between schools and whatever.
People
I'm
don't
not
know what
talking about.
Gilad, you're saying you have to break down. You have to explain to people what the voucher system is, because I think many.
Okay,
I think I talk to people, Israelis even. It's a totally foreign concept to them. So maybe
yeah.
you can explain to them an alternative view, even if they might disagree.
Yeah, so remember when I said half an hour ago that if you go to the USSR 50 years ago and then you go back to Israel 2022 and you find the food market is fairly similar. So if I want to maybe cite one system, one market, one industry in Israel that is the most similar to the USSR or North Korea, then it's the education system. It's a complete government monopoly where the government decides on the schools, pays everyone's salaries, decides who goes to school, who teaches the kids, what they teach kids, what hours, what methods, everything to the level of I don't know, everything is being determined by the Ministry of Education. A bunch of regulators, public sector employees, and politicians. They decide on everything. And of course, all of the schools are monopolies, right? Because you have to send your kids to school. Otherwise, you're basically breaking the law. And you have very, very few private schools in Israel. For 98%, I guess, of the population, you basically are forced to send your kids to government schools, to the government monopolies, and they get whatever education they get there. And the education level in Israel is low, at least based on international comparisons. The level of satisfaction from parents of the education system is low. Everyone knows the system doesn't work. But because everyone or many people are also averse to free market solutions, the voucher system still hasn't been implemented in Israel. What is the voucher system? It's basically a way to combine public funding with private schooling and private competition. So you have schools that are owned by, I don't know, NGOs,
Entrepreneurs, people. That's right.
business people, or whatever, and those schools have to convince parents to send their kids to those schools. And let's talk in a second how they convince them. And the government pays the schools per the number of kids that they manage to convince to come to the school. So the only way for the school to generate income is to convince parents to send kids to those schools. And you have many private schools and they all have to compete with each other. And let me give you some kind of an example that I hope will
In short, I just want to maybe so people that don't understand because I think you're so involved in this that you forget that we speak on a level that many people that
maybe
might
I'm
actually
I'm
a
I'm
little
I'm,
too
I'm
high.
skipping levels maybe in the
Right.
explanation.
So let me break it down for regular folk. Currently, you're paying taxes. They take your taxes and then they give it to the teachers' unions. They decide what to do, if and how to educate or miseducate your children. Instead, imagine that just like you get to choose where you go for your Kupat Halim, for your medical, you could go to Maccabi, Kali. You can go and you can choose where do I want to send my kid, and there will be unlimited and amazing options, and they have to compete. You send your student. If you send your student there, let's say there's, I'm making up numbers, 5,000 shekels a month the school gets. They put that towards the teachers, towards the school. If it's private, if it's an NGO, they can give you such a good experience, bring in such kids, put it at scale. They can even say to go to our school, you have to do that plus add an extra 1,000 shekels a month so they can provide even better experience that they would want if they want any kind of special school. If your kid is musically gifted, there will be a music creative school. And there's enough students to do that. If you're athletic, you can go there. If you're a genius in engineering and technology and computers, there will be schools and curriculum made for that instead of them trying to force you into teachers and schools that is made to basically kind of cover for everybody. And this way, who's being funded? The students are being funded, their education is being funded with the teacher, with your parents, as opposed to unions and bureaucrats being funded and only giving pennies of the insane amount of money that goes to the education system actually makes it to your children's education that you have no say over what they're learning.
So yeah, exactly. So it's important to understand that in the system today, the education system in Israel, because it's a government monopoly, the customers are the teachers, not the parents and the kids. The parents and the kids are the captive audience. They have to be there. They have to go to school. They have to go to a very specific school determined by the government. So the actual customers, clients, the people that the system works for are the teachers, especially the more senior teachers who get a fairly okay salary in Israeli standards. Another thing I would say is that in the ideal situation, just to kind of again demonstrate what I'm trying to offer, in the ideal situation, you don't even need an education bureau, education ministry. You don't need them. You replace them by a clerk in the Ministry of Finance with a small calculator that costs $5. He basically punches in the overall size of the education budget, divides it by the number of pupils, by the number of students in Israel. That comes to a number which is a voucher, and that voucher is being paid to any private school based on the number of pupils or kids that the school managed to convince to be, to join him. And just to give another example, which might sound a little bit or even vexing to some listeners, but I'm going to say it anyway. Think about how in Israel and many other countries you have advertisements or commercials for everything. For dairy products, for shoes, for shirts, for
Cars,
cosmetics,
everything.
for
Yeah.
cars, everything. But you almost never see advertisements for schools. You don't have, schools advertising themselves. Why? Because they're all monopolies. They don't have to do anything other to exist. And the stream of poor pupils is going to flow into the school, get lousy education, and there's nothing you can do about that. The second, you actually have those private schools within the voucher system, and those private schools have to compete with each other and convince parents to send them, their kids to that school. The school has to advertise itself. How do you do
Right.
that? You say something, hey, I have this guy, he's a PhD in mathematics. He developed a new system to teach kids mathematics. It's well documented. He won prizes with, the way he kind of teaches mathematics. Send your kids to me and they're going to study mathematics in my school. And you're actually going to see that. If you have
Hmm.
special schools that specialize in, I don't know, media or, I don't know, cinema or whatever, you're going to advertise the people that are, veterans of the industry that teach in your school. Finally, the clients or the kids are going to become the clients. Or more precisely, the parents, I guess, are going to become the clients rather than the teachers. And the final comment I'll make on that before you ask the next question is that, of course, the biggest beneficiaries of this new system are going to be parents and their kids. But also, good teachers are going to be huge
That
beneficiaries of the
that's
system.
yes.
Yeah,
The
because
good
how
teachers
to
are underpaid.
exactly. And
Everyone talks
but
about.
the
Sorry, go ahead.
secret weapon, the secret weapon of the school that wants to convince parents to send his kids or their kids to that school, the secret weapons are the good teachers, right? The school is going to be proud of the teacher, of the good teachers, as an attraction for the kids and for the parents. And those good teachers are going to have to be paid high wages to work in the schools that are interested in their services, just like Samsung is paying top dollars to great engineers. Very
Right.
similar. And one thing that people have to grasp, and maybe it's not obvious, is that education is a service, a product, just like any other product and service, which has costs, which has measurable
Expenses,
outcomes.
right?
And once you understand that education is simply a service, then you understand that as long as you have a government monopoly, the service is going to be completely and always lousy. And the
Mhm.
only way to improve it is not by pouring more money into a sick system. Rather, the only way to do it is to reform it, to introduce free competition, which is the voucher system.
I want to say something about actually special education. I was thinking about this the other night. Is that I have some friends that have kids with special ed, and special ed costs more money. Naturally, they need more teachers, more handholding, and I want to like people maybe to like imagine what free market in education would look like, right? So if let's say your kid is autistic, and let's say and therefore let's say what happened is you will assign instead of the government giving you the same amount as non-autistic children, you might get 2x or even 3x associated with your child. And then so when you send your child, you have far more buying power. What this also means is that for those that have children that aren't autistic, such as mine, I want them to be around. And my wife used to volunteer with kids with special ed. It's important for me for them to be around and understand children with special needs. It's very important, I think, for the development of children. What you'll do is you'll have regular schools that would like these extra, let's say this 3x, I'm throwing numbers out there, right? But 3x per student to bring revenue into the school. And what you're able to do is you can find opportunities where kids with special education aren't isolated only special education schools, but they can be exposed to the same other students that aren't in special ed that they're going to be working with and involved with when they're adults. We want to expose both special ed and non-special ed students to each other. I think it's good for society, it's good for children, it's good for empathy, it's good for growth for all kids. And under the current model, we're segregating all kinds of students. We're segregating, by the way, we're segregating Haredim from religious and religious from secular, and it drives people insane. I have a friend a very good friend of mine, and they're not religious, and he has no interest in sending his kids to religious, but he doesn't like that the secular schools are kind of anti-religious, right? I'm a friend of his, I'm religious, and he was like, he doesn't. So he sends them to a private school that's a mixed school, a Montessori school that I'm probably going to send my kids to this fall. And so you have this opportunity only because it's private that while I'm able to expose my kids to other people with other opinions, with other philosophies and other things that also strongly supports what me as parents provide for them. And what you're finding out is we're totally the only place where we're actually coming together as a society is where there's less regulation, which is and there's the most freedom of movement, and that is in the private sector in employment. Is that I hire based on merit. And that's where most people can be exposed to people that have different opinions and different backgrounds. If you're someone that's very pro diversity like me, what we need to do is tell the government stop to say, I will feed this group and I will feed that group and I will pick winners and I will pick losers. But instead, if they get out of the way, all of us can come together. We can become more integrated, more free, and then we'll also become more not just more integrated, but also more independent from one another in the government. And therefore, we'll all be better off.
Also, don't forget, not only there's an economic incentive for schools to accept kids that carry with them double or triple the voucher, but also think about reputation risk for not doing that. Because
Right.
schools that, for example, are going to, for whatever reason, ban, special need kids or whatever, they're going to be shamed and probably also
Correct.
demonstrated against, and no one is going to be, want to send their kids to a
Right.
school that is
Right.
being perceived rightly
Right.
probably as a school being managed by social reprobates or whatever you want to call it. So it's not only a question of money, it's also a question of reputation. It makes sense for private companies in a free competition situation to be nice to everyone.